all of you are using DHCP server, isn't it? Okay. What are the challenges you are facing when you are doing the maintenance and to DHCP server? Are you going to track your details? Sometimes in the case of origin ID auditing case, they may request who use that particular ID, say 191.6.1.15 at this date. How you can find the date? Is there any way? Okay. Then if you are using DHCP for your server segment, how you can track the IP? This particular server is using this IP. Or if you are using the, something like VDI environment, how you can track the IP? Okay. Use a John, what's the IP? Like that. Then how you can get your usage of DHCP from the scope? In class C we have 254 IPs, then 200 IPs as used. How you notify the thing? Then we have to log into the server, and we have to monitor the DHCP scope and all. To overcome all the issues like that, track the IP addresses, monitor the usage like that, we have to use some IT management software. Okay. Earlier we have to purchase some software like SolarWinds IP, like that. Okay. Now in the server 2012, standard both JavaScript edition, we can use IPAM, IP Address Management Server. That is free with the serverlation. Or else we have to manually use some Excel or whatever software and track the IPs and enter the details like that. Or else we can have to go with third-party tools like SolarWinds. Now we can use Jesus IPAM server. What are the advantages? There is no cost, easy to manage using your Windows 8 client, installing RSAC, also administration tools. You can manage your IPAM server. These are the components of the IPAM solution. This is IPAM client. Windows 8 to your management server. It can be a server 2012 standard edition. Installing RSAT or enabling RSAT on the server. We can manage your servers. These are the IPAM users. IPAM administrators are there, IPAM ASN administrators are there, several user groups are there. And also, using IPAM, we can manage your DNS server, we can track your zones and records, and DHCP server, tracking your scopes, multiple scopes, super scopes like that, and network policy server, and your domain controller. Anyways, activity together, DNS server. To install IPAM server, it should be a member server in your domain. Okay? And we can't install IPAM server using your domain controller, either read domain controller or either domain controller. So this is RSAT on a Windows 8 server. So also you can't install the domain controller, DHCP server. Client communication. Communicate with IPAM server. It using that particular code, and code can be even changed in PowerShell modules. If you are using that particular code or any other program, you can change the particular code. So server communication, it's same also. This is the role-based access control of IPAM server. There is a user group called IPAM user. Users, those who are in this group, they can only read the data. Okay. From your IPAM database, you can read the data. Then IPAM MSN administrator. This is a local security group. Okay. When you are installing IPAM, this group will be created from your server. Okay. And what you can do? You can create the IPAM user security group, and you can perform server monitoring and management tasks in addition to IPAM phone management task. Then IPAM ASN administrator. Okay. It's like this, it's also a global security group. What you can do is, you can add to edit IP address spaces on your DHCP server, multiple DHCP servers. Okay. Then, what is the administrator? He can retrieve the data for editing purposes. Then IPAM administrator, super administrator. You can manage your DHCP server. The protocols are using RPC, WMI, SNG, like that. What are the actions? You can get the IP address utilization, service status, Okay. Configure the servers and scope. You can add scope on using ITAM server. We don't have to go to the DHCP console. From a single console, you can add multiple scopes like that. Okay. Then DNS. It's using also RPC, WFI, Windows Management. We can discover the server and we can get the zone configurations and monitor the server. Then we can monitor our domain network. Okay. It's also same. Then enter policy server. We can get all the user logins and device logins. When you are installing the IPAM server, there are three options: distributed, centralized, and hybrid. On the distributed thing, we have to install IPAM servers on your own site, actually your site. Says head office, branch office 1, branch office 2, branch office 3, like that. In a centralized one, using single IPAM server, we can manage multiple DHCP servers and DNS servers. Those are located in your branch offices as well as your head office. Then hybrid environment. Using central IPAM server, you can manage all other IPAM servers which are in a branch office. Okay. Getting the backup of IPAM server, we have to get this folder and restore and save as it. It's easy. For the same location, we have to restore that particular folder. With the server 2012 R2 even, it's supporting SQL external database. We can use your external database to store IPAM data. We'll have a look on the IPAM server. From here, I can add the IP address range, I can add IP address subnet. It's very easy. We can mention the activity sites like that. I have done an installation guide for IPAM server. I'll share with you. All the steps are there. Okay. Now we'll talk about Server 2012 DHCP server. Okay. What are the new things in the Server 2012 DHCP server? Have you heard anything? Any improvements on the DHCP server? Okay. Very first thing, how we can manage DHCP using PowerShell. 121 commands are there. This is Server 2012 R2. What is the advantage of using PowerShell? The DHCP server. Okay, as example, you want to add some ID reservation. Earlier, what is the procedure? Manually, we have to add the record one by one row using DHCP server console. Go to the list IP, right click and add to the reservation like that. Now, what we can do? We can create a CSV file and add all the MAC addresses, file name or whatever record. Then, using one PowerShell command, we can add multiple reservations or multiple records to your DHCP scope. It's very easy. And also with the server co-edition, even we don't have to connect to GUI RSAT or whatever the management server. With the same console, we can manage our DHCP server. Policy-based management. What is this? Say, as an example, domain admin or DHCP admin can define the policy. As a say, you say he is using HP laptop. Okay. Then admin can configure policy. Say, when you are using the IP address for user A, he is getting mentioned gateway. Okay. 192.168.1.1. If the user is using a Dell laptop, he is getting any kind of different gateway. Say 192.168.254, something like that. Depend on your client. Or we can configure the MAC addresses, manufacturer, Packard, or Dell, like that. We can configure the policies using your DHCP server. Then DHCP failover. For the redundancy purposes, we can configure DHCP failover. With the server 2008 or server 2008 R2, is there any option? Yes, we can configure DHCP on failover clustering. Then what is the advantage? With the Server 2008 R2, if you are configuring DHCP scope on a failover clustering, we should have shared disk storage. Even iSCSI is AND or iSCSI is software. So configure the failover clustering with the Server 2008 R2. Now we don't have to provide us any shared disk storage. We can even using your server to configure the failover. What is the other advantage? With the Server 2008 or Server 2008 R2, failover clustering is enabled only with Enterprise Edition of DataSet Edition. Okay. When you are purchasing the software, the standard is around 800 USD. Enterprise 4000 USD. Now it's with the standard edition, we can configure failover. We don't have to buy any software or any other edition to configure DHCP failover. What are the limitations? With the 2008 failover clustering, we can go up to how many number of nodes? 60. Now, with the Server 2012 DHCP failover, we can go up to 2. And it's supporting only with IPv4, not with the IPv6. I'll show you how to configure DHCP failover. While it's booting up, I'll show you all the PowerShell commands which are related to the DHCP server. Okay. Using this command, we can retrieve all the DHCP related commands which are in the DHCP module. DHCP module name is DHCP server. Okay. If you want to get any help using this command, you can retrieve the help file. At the moment I have only one scope starting from in DC1 I have installed DHCP server. Now I am going to install DHCP on DC2. That's my additional method.
Darshan, you mentioned that if you are going to backup IPAN, there are two database and log file needs to be backed up. So do we need SQL on that?
No. We can use either SQL server or else Windows internal database.
Yes, that way.
Yes. With the Server 2012, we should use only the internal database. 2012 R2, we can use SQL server. That SQL can be a fail clustered or mirrored cluster. I'm going to add the role. We have completed the DHCP configuration. Just click on next. Commit our address. Now I am going to replicate this particular scope LAN 01 into my DHCP 02. Okay. Get to the configure failover. Let me do restart the server. Okay, when you are configuring the failover, there are two options: load balance or hot standby. If you select load balance, the server will work as 50-50. Okay, so as an example, client A may get IP address from BC1, client B may get IP address from BC2, like that. In a hot standby case, it's a failover. Only one server will work at a time. In case of server failure, the server 2 will take off the load. I configure the load balance 50-50. Any questions? If you need any help on GSCP or ITAR, you can contact me either my mobile or with my email number. My blog is there.
Okay guys, let's have a small break. 15 minutes, questions are ready. So we'll start at 7:05. Now today we are going to discuss about multi-server management in Windows Server 2012 and 2012 R2. And today's agenda is going to be on, I'm going to be giving you an overview of multi-server management and the challenges we are facing today when we do, a data center management, and what are new features in Server Manager, and the interface options in Windows Server 2012 R2, and again, command line management, that is Windows PowerShell, and how to deploy a PowerShell Web Access Gateway, which is something new, and stuff like that. So moving on. Okay. Now, why do we need to move from Windows Server 2008 or R2 to 2012? Some may say it's just the interface, everything under the same. Let me correct you, it's wrong. So, Windows Server 2012 R2 itself presents a great platform for your applications, for your web servers to be hosted on. And actually, you might already know that there was an issue with OpenSSL few days back. There were some vulnerable editions of OpenSSL which could be exposed. Someone could expose data from OpenSSL, using another different technology. So, in each and every technology we have, pros and cons. So, now we need to see why we need Windows Server 2012 R2 for your management needs. Actually, when we talk about server management in Windows Server 2012 R2, most of the time if somebody asks you to create a, a user, active directory user, and you just right click on a user which has same permissions, you just copy it and do like that. What happens if your boss asks you to create 100 users, 50 from sales, 50 from marketing? Are you going to create users one by one? No. We have option for that. As Darshana mentioned in his session, everything can be done from PowerShell, even of user management. You can create the list of users and the names and whatnot, put it in a CSV. You can do an import on that CSV and create the user's instance. So, as well as say if you have multiple servers to be managed, in that case, you don't have to log into each and server to check the status, check the events and all. In Windows Server 2008, and onwards they have introduced a concept called server manager. It's a single console which can fulfill all of your management needs. So in that case, in 2012 R2 version, it's more advanced, and you can get almost everything about your servers from that single console. You can even get the event details. You can see what services are running. You can see what's the performance, everything. And for update management, WSUS is there in 2012 R2, and the new version of WSUS is much more, architecture is same. It's much more easier to handle, and stuff like that makes this product a must to use. So there's another option I missed, that's server mode. Now imagine you may see that you have 100,000 Windows updates. Most of these updates are for the UI. If you are running a UI, that is a user interface or a GUI, you have to have more updates and more memory. Now say you can get rid of the UI and just put it on a server core edition. You can put your domain controller in your server core edition, and you can remotely manage it from RSAT tool. In that sense, you will save your memory, you will save your resources, and less updates for you. That's easy. And if you want the GUI for some task, you can instantly enable it by just adding the feature. Same like in in Linux they do. They can up the X Windows system. Same like that. So about server manager, glanceable. It means you can see the overall view of your data center through one console. So in the dashboard you can see what's really going there. You can group your servers. You say you have a couple of domain controllers, you can create a group called domain controllers and put your servers there, and you can see what's going on those servers, and it's actionable. So every issue can be fixed from server manager. You can, in 2012 R2, you may notice that when you open the server manager console, there's a section called tools. From there you can go to your DHCP, DNS and all. So it's like that. And relevant, server manager dashboard is customizable. You can customize the dashboard in any way you want, and you can create custom groups as well. So this is the server manager architecture. So if you see that, you can see there's a bunch of remote servers here, right? We call it a server pool. And in this server pool, you can manage all these servers in this server pool from one console. That's the server manager. You can install RSAT tools on your laptop. Actually, if you are running Windows 7, you have download Windows RSAT tools and install it. Then you should enable it from turn Windows features on and off. But by default, as I remember, 8.1 and 8, it's by default enabled. So apart from that, you can create custom queries. You can create custom search filters and see, say, what are the events occurred at this time for this group of servers. You can do some stuff like that. So it's very easy to manage. And when we talk about RSAT tools, it's for your client. I don't think any administrator would go for a data center just to have a look at their server. So you can install RSAT tools on your computer, on your client computer, and then you can remotely manage your data center from there. So as I mentioned, it's by default enabled on Windows 8.1, and you can access the tools from server manager. Going to the server manager, console you can open, and from tool there you have the tools menu. You can open the DHCP, DNS and whatnot, or you can go to administrative tools, and from there you can get everything that has there. So it's disabled by default on 7 and XP, so you have to turn it on by going to the control panel. Okay, the demonstration parts, I have like 4 demonstrations to show you. I will do it after finishing the slides first, because there's not much to cover in this content. Okay, now we are going to talk about the full GUI, min shell, core interface changes. You know, there are 3 deployment options for Server 2012 R2. You know, if you get the full server, that means you get the full MetroStyle GUI shell, and you can install desktop experience. That's a sub feature under server management infrastructure. So you can install that sub feature to get the full experience. That means you can install MetroStyle apps in there. And the other option is full server without server graphical shell. It's like this. You are getting a command from there. From there, you can enter the name of the management snapping you want, like whatever MMC you want to run, and then you can launch the MMC from that command prompt window. Even the server manager you can run from there, but there are some limitations. I'm going to explain it in the next slide. But this is ideal. You have the command prompt, and you have you don't have the full GUI, but you can still manage. So less updates and less bug fixes for the server in that sense. So server core, that is completely command prompt. That's exactly the same thing you are getting if you have installed Hyper-V standalone product. You may know the interface you are getting is server core. In that case, you can't run any MMC snappings from there, but you can remotely manage your server. Suppose now you have you are saying that I need to deploy this domain controller without additional updates and all. Go for the server core. You can go for the server core, and you can manage it remotely. So this is the hierarchy. You can start with the GUI and then reduce to minimum shell or server core. Either way, otherwise you can go from server core to GUI. At any time you can switch between these options. So interface choices. Why do we consider about the interfaces? So you can say sometimes administrators prefer to use the GUI. Some administrators prefer to use the command line. Some prefer to use both. In that case, we are offering you 3 options, and you can avoid the attack footprint of the server. That means, you know, I said if you are running 4 edition, there's less number of updates required. So less number of updates mean you don't have to worry about many of the security fixes and all that's coming for the UI. So less exploits. That means you can have a fully patched server with a minimal footprint, and it makes your life easier. And again, when you want to install the GUI, you don't have to do a full installation. And when you do, it's actually like this. You are enabling and disabling the features. Your features and files are already stored in the server. So when you uninstall a feature, you can specify that you want to completely remove the files associated with it. So the next time you are going to install that feature, you have to have the access to a physical media or ISO, Windows ISO, to get the feature to install on the server. So you can have a single server deployment image. So for you don't have to have different images for Minshell and all. You can have one deployment image. After you deploy, you can always switch between the interfaces. So these are the comparison with the 3 interface choices we have. So you can see that server core is only supporting command prompt, and it supports PowerShell and .NET Framework. And minimum shell supports server manager and other MMC. You can't get control panel and some. and server with GUI, you can see the difference between server with GUI and server with desktop experience included. So you can see you can't install any other theme. So if you install desktop experience, you can have your own theme. You can install Metro style apps and even the media player. If you are going for GUI, I don't think the desktop experience would be much needed, because no matter how much you work, you are never going to change the Windows themes on your server. So Server Core supports .NET Framework 4.5 and SQL Server 2012. So you can do the SQL 2012 installation on the Server Core edition. Now it's possible. So it's like there are three sub features in this graphical user interface feature. So it's like removing one feature and then downgrading to Windshell, then downgrading to Server Core. It's easier to move between those editions. So I'm going to show you in the demonstration how do we do that from the GUI. You can do it from the add or remove features wizard, or you can do it by PowerShell itself. And these are some limitations of Windshell. I'm not going to go through all of these. You can just once I post this slide deck, you can see for that. And this is the important part: how to enable or disable Windshell and the Server Core edition. Now this is the feature. GUI management infrastructure. It says user interface and infrastructure. When you install server Windows Server 2012 R2 on a server, by default you are getting these two sub features installed. So once you remove the server graphical shell, that sub feature, you are getting the minimum shell. Suppose that now you want to go into a Server Core, so you remove both of these features. So these are the commandlets we use for installation. Of course, you can do it from the GUI. If you have a GUI, you can just go to add roles and features wizard, untick the unwanted features, and then you can move on. Otherwise, I recommend you, it's easier to use PowerShell. Nowadays, everybody is using PowerShell. It's easier to do some tasks with the keyboard when you are at hand. So what you have to do is, if your Windows feature, this is already installed. When you do a default installation, this feature will be default installed. So from there, you can uninstall the sub features. So this option -remove, this means uninstall this feature with all the associated files that are in the hard disk. So the next time you are going to install this feature, you will need access for the WinSXS folder or the physical media. This footprint, reducing this footprint. So in this case, as I mentioned it's in the Windows SXS folder, and there you are getting all the features. The files are copied to that folder. So you don't want to run you don't have to insert a physical disk again to install the features. So otherwise you can, or if you say now this feature is not going to be used for anytime sooner, you can remove that completely even from this folder by adding that keyword. So now this is the Server Core installation option. As I mentioned, you can see what are the installed features from here, and if we run any commandlet to uninstall a Windows feature with that remove options, you will see this remark disabled with payload remove. So this is the syntax when you use that commandlet uninstall Windows feature name. If you want to remove it completely, you can use this feature, this keyword. But remember, it's not available in the server manager. That means GUI, you can't remove the files from the GUI. You have to use the PowerShell to completely remove the file as well. So the reinstallation sources are these. You need to either have a Windows Update, or you have to use a WIM installation, or you have to use the Windows SXS folder on the server. So even this location, the source location for your files, you can mention it in a group policy. This is the group policy setting for that. Reinstallation, you can do it from the server manager. See, when you do that, when you remove the feature, sometimes you can specify a source alternate path. This happens sometimes when you are going to install the .NET framework. Sometimes it will, you just do next. Sometimes say no source. In that case, you might have encountered that option. You have to give the source folder path, the source ISO or the that SXS folder located on the hard drive. Again, there's a demo. I'm going to show it in the end how to switch between the interfaces. And now we are moving to Windows PowerShell. So this is the last section I have to cover. Now, how many of you are currently using Windows PowerShell? I think most of you are using Windows PowerShell on your environment. So, for some time in the IT community, the problem we are having is some admins say, hey, Windows is just GUI. We are from Unix platform. There's no place for us to do the server management. There's no way. Command line is there, but not. It's not. It's like we can't use it for more management purposes. So that's why Microsoft introduced Windows PowerShell. From PowerShell, you can do anything, almost everything you have on the GUI. So there are like 3,000 plus commandlets. It's not hard to learn the syntax. It's a verb noun format is there. Actually saying like get help, get dash help, something like that. So you don't have to remember the syntax. If you type get dash HE and press tab, you will get it. It will automatically fill out the rest for you. That's called IntelliSense. So most importantly, we have you may have already heard this concept. People are calling not developers, not operations, DevOps. That means it's to reduce the gap between the developers and the infrastructure guys. So Microsoft has invested a lot of time on this one as well. So say if you are a developer, even nowadays developers are doing the production releases and all in most of the software organizations as well. So for them, this is a valuable tool. It's a must to have tool. They can schedule it in a scheduled task. And PowerShell 4.0, it's the newest version. It's built in for the Server 2012 R2 and Windows 8.1. Can be downloaded for 7 and 2008 R2. Now it's fully backward compatible. You can run whatever written in PowerShell 3 on PowerShell 4, but remember, if your scripts are written on PowerShell 2.0, you are saying that you are running the script on a server which is written PowerShell 2.0, you have to have the Windows, the .NET Framework 3.5 SP1 installed, because otherwise that scripts are not gonna work because of the common language runtime. That is some concept in .NET. It's 4.0, I think. PowerShell 4.0 is compiled using common language runtime 4.0, so it's not compatible with PowerShell 2. That's why you need to have .NET Framework 3.5. So basically, if you do a standard installation for .NET Framework 4 and 3.5 is already there, I think. You don't have to do any modifications, but in some rare cases, if you are doing a SQL installation, sometimes it say 3.5 is missing. So you have to do it first, otherwise the installation will fall. Okay, so as I mentioned about the resiliency, you can have robust connection session connectivity. Say even you are working on a PowerShell session, the internet goes down, or the network connectivity goes down, or you close the window, you can connect to the same session and see what's going. So disconnected sessions, it's there, and you can do job scheduling, and there's something called Windows PowerShell workflow. You can start a workflow from saying workflow, and you can include whatever the commandlets you need to run from a single line to multiple lines, and you can reuse it again. If you want to run that workflow daily, you can schedule it as a scheduled task. So why we should use PowerShell 4.0? It's because like that, when you do a click sequence, you may never know which step you miss. But if you do it in a script, you are pre-programming that script, and the only thing you have to worry about the inputs you give it. So in that case, PowerShell is great. So you can pre-program everything, test it, and put it into a scheduled task. So even for a person with little programming knowledge, say as IT pros, I think some of us have some programming knowledge, some of us don't, but it requires minimal skill set for automation. And remember, there's a script repository, also that TechNet, I believe. From there you can just search similar scripts written by admins, so you can modify the content and you can adapt it to your environment. So you don't have to learn about the syntax. You just have an idea on what you should do. You can just search for what you do, and if you forget the commandlet, you can always get help. You can search for commandlets in command help window. That's on PowerShell ISC. It's a separate IDE for running scripts and testing them. And again, it has 3000 plus commandlets, 100 plus modules. Even now, if you are running Office 365 organization, sometimes you can't do everything from the web UI. In that case, you can use PowerShell remote management for your Office 365 organization, for your Exchange Online. So it's pretty much easy. And these are some of the new modules which came with Windows PowerShell 4.0. And when you get the help, you can put get help and whatever the command you need and press enter and get the help. You can update the help content. You can save the help content you gain from internet and save it to your local file share. And regarding PowerShell ISC, as I mentioned, it's a complete IDE for you to do your scripting in there, and you can run it same as in what if you have experience with Visual Studio, you can write a code and test it there. Same like that. So in that case, I more encourage people to use PowerShell ISC because it's easier rather than typing in Notepad or Notepad++, because you are getting the exact help, and you can run whatever command you type at that moment. You can select the command and write from there. And there are new editor features like IntelliSense and remote script debugging which comes with PowerShell ISC. So and in this case, say it's same like Visual Studio. If you have seen some programmers using Visual Studio, you are getting the keywords highlighted and variables highlighted, stuff like that. If you use in Notepad for your scripting, it would be hell of a mess if you miss a single line. So if you are running into a syntax error, it will show you in a red line that there is some error in this one. And even you can get what command that I should run from the PowerShell commands window. It's in the ISC. So you can type in and you can give several parameters there, and you can search what command that you need to use for this situation. And of course the scripting in the sense, now if you take a bash script, that is a born against shell Linux script, you may see that it's more complex. It's more like coding. It's like more into C++. But here you don't have to worry about anything. It's like if you don't know the correct keyword, or if you remember one part of the commandlet, you can press tab and see what's the command. And also the important features is like this. This has a real powerful scripting facility. In Unix you can get the output of one command to the output of another command. It's called piping. You can do same with PowerShell. And this is the PowerShell ISC. See, it highlights the keyword. It highlights the programmatic words. It highlights the functions. So when you type in, it automatically suggests what comes next. And IntelliSense. So it means when you type in the command and when you press tab, it automatically completes the rest. Otherwise, it will give you a small drop-down list, and you can select whatever the next step you need to go from there. Yeah, see now this is the from there you can select this commandlet, and you can run that portion only in the window. So in real time it's running while you can see the code here. This is regarding the code snippets. So you can it's enabled in ISC, and you can see how the structure is going to be by seeing at the code snippets. So don't worry if you don't understand much about PowerShell, it's much easier to learn. And this is the new concept, PowerShell Web Access. Now for PowerShell also you may say, right, PowerShell is there, but I need to be physically present at the network. What happens if I am at home? I don't have any access to remote management and all, but I have internet access. We have a solution. There's a concept called PowerShell Web Access. You have to install the PowerShell Web Access role on a separate server, which is on the DMZ, demilitarized zone, and from there you can you have to generate certificates for trust relationships for your servers. What you are getting is you can log in to your PowerShell Web Access gateway using your credentials. From there you are getting a PowerShell window in a web browser. From there you can manage your data center from that single console. Even if you close the window, you can rejoin for the session from there. So it's the basic structure is like this. You can use your mobile. Even your mobile works with that if your browser is HTML plus Ajax enabled. From internet you are connected to the PowerShell Web Access gateway, and from there you can manage your corporate network. Now if you are doing a PowerShell disconnected session on standalone PowerShell, you can always create a remote session variable, and you can connect it from here. You can connect it to the remote. You have to enable remote management. If you want to run your PowerShell on remote machines, you have to enable remote management on those machines as well. So once you exit from the session, you can load that same session again from another PowerShell window. So this is the workflow of PowerShell Web Access. User connects via the browser and enters his credential and work with the environment, and suddenly he loses the internet connection. Once he reconnects with internet at a later point, Windows tries to automatically reconnect with the PowerShell session. It's like same as when you do a remote desktop session and close it, and somebody else has logged into the same server with another credential, with the same credential. The next time you're gonna remote into that, you will get which session you need to connect. Same as this, when you log in, you are getting the same close prompt saying you need to connect to the disconnected session. And regarding the workflows, you can define a workflow. It can be a single line or multiple lines, and then you can use it at a later point for your task automation. And it's authored using Windows PowerShell script or Visual Studio Workflow Designer, SAML, and these workflows survive system interruptions. And if that workflow is running for longer than expected, the system is automatically trying to recover from that or to stop that. And about job scheduling, task scheduler. Why do we need to run schedule task? You may need to get a backup at 2 p.m. but you need to run it on one time at 2 p.m. So simple as that, you can have a task schedule, and you can execute it based on triggers. When user John logs in, run this schedule task. Same concept, but it's easier. If you make your daily administrative tasks in PowerShell, you can save it in someplace on a remote share and execute from a server which has access according to the given triggers. Once daily, weekly, at startup, or when some user logs in, or when these conditions are met, same like that. So now I'm going to move to the demonstrations. Let me cover as much as demonstrations I can. Actually, these are, I have to tell you, these are not live demonstrations. These are some recorded demonstrations which I have found to reduce the amount of time to present, and when it's recorded, it's demo error prone. Okay, let's see. First, let's see the server management demonstration. This is one of the domain controllers. So I'm going to add the feature. I'm going to open the server manager. You can see the server manager there, and I'm going to click all servers. From there, I'm going to click manage. Going to add more servers in the same network to this server manager. So I can see, I can search whatever servers I have available. I'm going to add couple, server 1 and server 2 and server 3 there. Okay, now the servers are added. Now I can click server 1 from here and manage that server from this single console. So even for server 2, I can click server 2 and add roles for that server from this single console. I don't have to log into that server again. So I'm going to do ADDS installation on this one. So it asks which server you need to install this roles. From here, okay, going to install add features, ADDS, direct services. Next, and I can specify to restart the destination server if this role requires a reboot. So now I am putting install. I can click close, but if I click close, it will automatically work in the background. I can see the status in this notification area. So these are the notifications right now I have. I can see what are the details of those installations that's running. So this says this we can promote this server 1 to a domain controller. That's a post installation task. So I'm going to promote this server. So I just right clicking on that, and it's running in the background. I need to type in the credentials. Okay. And DSRM, direct service recovery mode password if I want. And you can see something called view script. Once you finish that, you are getting whatever you have done in a text file. So you can save this as a text file, and you can later use this on PowerShell for the deployment of another server. So I'm going to save it on my desktop. I'm going to rename it as install DC. Save. And click next, install. So now the server roles are installing here, the post deployment tasks are running. I can see when I go to attribute sites and services, and I click the default site, and I can see server 1 is there. So Now I am going to do same with the server 2. Now I need to make it a domain controller. So I am going to open that script I have saved at the latest installation. It's actually text file. Don't worry about that. I can open the text file and then run it on the PowerShell ISE itself. So it's here. Click open. So this is the commandlet for installing ADDS. Okay, I'm going to install ADDS on server 2. So it's running the installation. Now the installation is running. How do I do the rest post deployment task? For the post deployment task, we have created a script. So we can give this script as an input. Okay, now the feature is installed. Now you can see the rest of the parts here. Okay, I have selected this part and press run. So now it asks for the credentials, same as is when I am going to do ADDS, it asks for the domain credentials, whichever the user has with the access. So I am going to give my administrator information here. Now it's going to run the same on computer server 2. Okay. We transfer the password again. Right. Right. Now you can see the post installation tasks are completed on server 2 as well. So say now I have like 5-6 servers which have been already configured with the roles. I can get the script from the first server and run it simultaneously on all those servers. You can open a tab again here and complete that. So I'm going to save. When I go here to the server manager and go to activity sites, go to servers, you can see server 1 and 2 both are there as domain controllers. Okay, let's move on to the next demonstration now. It will be on RSAT. Let's open up server manager, and now I am going to add some servers to a group, and I am going to search for the available servers. This server 1 and server 2. I added them to the server manager. Now I am going to create a group. So if I have 5-6 domain controllers, I can create a group called domain controllers and add it to that group. So I am gonna rename now these servers. Suppose these are on rack A1, so I can select which servers are on the first rack A1 and group it to in a single group. So in that case, I know that there's a label saying in the server manager these servers belong to this group. So I know these servers are same, the configurations are same, they are in the same roles and whatnot. I can do the maintenance task and I can view the logs, I can view the events from the single console for these servers. So I'm going to add server 2 as well and DC1. All these servers are same as which I have used on the earlier demo. So now when I go to the server manager, I can see this rack A1 servers here. Now I can go to the dashboard and I can see the service. Now I am going to see what are the services that are running on this group, and I am going to configure. Okay, now I have configured events and services for this rack A1 server. When I go to this one, when this group, when I select DC1 and scroll it down, I can see what services are running on DC1. I can see what roles and features installed on DC1. Simple concept. See, I can launch PowerShell for DC2 from here, from the server manager console. Single point of entry. So you don't have to worry about keeping multiple windows open on your 2+3+ monitors. Now I am going to select multiple servers from that group, and I can set the performance counters. This is required. Say if you are running a database server, you may need to know what is affecting the database, what aspect, whether it's a CPU, whether it's indexes, whether your database has crashed, some stuff like that. You can run the Windows performance counters. So from here you can set the performance counters. No need to go for perfmon. You can start the performance counters here for both servers. Now I'm going to select DC01. Okay. Now I'm going to run. If you use with Exchange, you are familiar with Exchange. You know we can run Exchange best practice analyzer. Same like this, you can run a best practice analyze report, BPS scan on whatever server you need from this server manager. So I have already selected DC01. Now I can see what are the problems I have in my server, and I can get actions for those. So I have clicked this file shares, and from here I can create file shares on any of those servers I have. So I can select DC1. I can select the volume. See, I have used only a single console. I never logged into any other server. I am just using this console to manage all my servers. Now if you open up File Explorer here and type in the share you just have created, you can see it from there. Okay, that's it about that demo. Now the time is, I have only 10 minutes left. I am going to show you the PowerShell Web Access demonstration. The MinShell thing, the demonstration is actually configured with PowerShell Web Access. It's not much of a thing. You can just use the PowerShell commandlet to reduce the interface choice you have on your server. Okay, let's move on to PowerShell Web Access demo. Okay, I am going to open up Server Manager on DC01 again. Now I am going to install PSWA user role. So I am going to install on server 1. It's a feature actually. When you click this Windows PowerShell, you can see that PowerShell Web Access is a sub feature. You can enable this, and it requires IIS and HTTPS redirection. So I have selected those as well, and I'm going to install that. Now it says the configuration is required. Go to the old servers. Right click on this server and go to Windows PowerShell. So there are some post configuration tasks we need to run. First one is to add some authorization rules. So you have to mention which servers can be managed from this gateway. So you have to add this server is open to manage, stuff like that. So first of all, you have to install PSWA web application. That is something come with the IIS. So it creates a pool for application pool for web access gateway. So you need to access this, and here it says use test certificate. So you can use your own SSL certificate if you are running, if you are giving access to PSWA from outside. And if you are doing just for demonstrations, you can create a test certificate, or you can create a self-signed certificate. Okay. Now I am going to. I have typed get authorization rules. There are no authorization rules currently. So I'm going to add one. So in this case, now I have mentioned that every user can log into any destination. So you can customize that depending on your requirement. You can just search in the internet how to enter authorization rule. So the important thing is you need to have your firewall ports open. If that's the case, if you are connecting a PSWA gateway server and you say that it's not connecting, you have to check your PowerShell authorization rules and the firewall ports, and of course, most importantly, certificate. And you can use this on a work group as well, but I suggest strongly to use a domain environment. If you are using a work group environment, you may have to create identical user accounts in each and every server to use this command. In my organization we have same user account, admin account in each server, because we are not running our production environment on a domain. Every server is isolated. So in this case, we had to use exact same user account. So the configuration rules, authorization rules I need to create are much bigger. So I'm going to see what authorization rules are there. So the rule 1 is already added. So I'm going to close PowerShell, close Server Manager. I'm going to open up IE, and I'm going to now suppose that if you install a SSL certificate, you can do, if your web server is open to the internet, you can manage from there as well. So I'm going to give this URL. See that this PSWA, it's the name came from the default website I have created. So configuring the IIS part, I haven't mentioned it. It's a simple task. When you install the PSW web application, it automatically generates a app pool and a website for that. So from there you can do your SSL bindings and all. That's not much difficult task. So since I haven't used SSL, it prompts me for an error. Now this is the interface you get, same like the OW interface if you are familiar with that. Exchange, Microsoft Exchange. So I'm going to give my administrator password, and I'm going to give server 1. I need to manage server 2. So I'm going to sign in. I'm getting a remote PowerShell here on a web browser. You know the power of this is, you can now your support guys say, hey, we are running into a problem. Can you see, look into this. You can't say no if you already have a mobile device with internet and PSWA configured. You can just open up your mobile or tablet, go for a web browser, and from there you can manage. Even you can restart, you can shut down any servers, you can do the updates, anything. So when I type hostname and press enter, you can see server 2 is coming up. So I am remotely managing server 2. This can be done from the Kubernetes network or either via the internet. So I can see what processes are running on server 2. Running services. Now I am going to close this session. Okay. Now I am going to create a variable. Now normally if I create a variable on a single PowerShell session, when I'm going to access the same variable on another session, it's not available. Since we are running on disconnected sessions now, it will be available. So this is hello from PSW, just a text. You can see the output there, hello from PSWA. Now I am going to save this session. I'm going to close Internet Explorer. It says you want to leave this session. Yes, leave this page. I'm going to IE again. I'm going to log into my PSW gateway again. Okay. Problem. Password. Server 2. I have connected to server 2. Now it says there are disconnected sessions available. Now I can click this session and connect to that. Now I am going to type the variable name. So if this is successful, the output should be same because it's already saved. Output is there. So the same session you are again getting connected there. Okay, I don't have time to do the Minshell demonstration. It's basically open up a PowerShell, remove the sub feature I have mentioned from there, and you can remove the first sub feature and go into WinShell, and then if you want, you can reduce down to server core. Same way you can go from server core to GUI. So that's about it. And any of you have any questions? Suppose you don't have any questions, just write here. If you don't have any infrastructure to test your lab, there's a great website called Microsoft Virtual Labs. There are some interesting virtual labs hosted by All Systems. So you can run those labs on different platforms. They have Exchange Server Labs, System Center Labs, everything. So you can get some ideas. For the people who are new to the industry, they can learn a lot doing the things hands-on rather than watching videos. And also there's the Channel 9 website available. You can go to that website and download the latest content, so you don't have to worry about train signal and the rest of the stuff. Microsoft is providing everything free now, so you can use that. Okay guys, that would be all for today. Thank you.